Hello guys, this is Svetlana from Kamui Cosplay and welcome to part 2 of my Monster Hunter Zinogre armor making of. Last time I showed you how I built the breastplate and the belt of the costume. Today, however, I am going to finish the rest of the armor. Exciting! Okay, I actually already finished it, like in the back, but I'm showing you how I made it. Yes! All that's missing are the bracers, the headpiece, and the legs. Just like last time, I made everything out of super cheap EVA foam. Oh, and speaking about EVA foam, check out my new EVA foam armor book. It costs only $5 and is full of amazing and helpful pictures and words just for you. I made them all for you. Check it out! But now let's start with the video. Let's begin with the bracers. First, I made a tight pattern by wrapping my arm in duct tape. I traced it on paper, adjusted it a bit, and then copied the shape on 5mm EVA foam. Next, I heated up the foam evenly and shaped it nice and round until I got a nice basic bracer. To light up the whole project, I used digital RGB LED strips. I cut them into the right length, glued them onto the foam, and then finished the circuit on the inside. The first test worked out nicely. For the layers on top, I created some additional paper patterns. I traced them on more foam and cut them out as well. Next, I dremeled a sharp edge and attached the piece using contact cement. So far so good. For the following step, I had to separate my patterns into smaller pieces. Each of them got traced to 5mm white, slightly translucent foam. Then I cut them out, made a little V-gap in the middle, filled it with glue and squished it into shape. Afterwards, I burned in some texture with my soldering iron and attached each scale with more contact cement. Now it got interesting. I traced the shape of my hand on paper and taped on a bunch of LED strips and wires. After soldering them together, this is how my LED hand looked like. Next, I made a duct tape pattern of my hand and used it for another translucent armor piece. I cut out some foam triangles, glued them together and soldered some texture. For the glove, I just sewed 2 layers of lycra together and used the shape of my hand for the patterns. After cutting the fabric out and turning it inside out, I got some great fitting gloves. The LED strips then got hand sewed on and I added some thin foam stripes for additional diffusion. This was a test I just held together with tape, not bad. The other bracer was made pretty much the same way. I created the base and glued on some LED strips. These then got covered with white foam and I soldered some texture in. Super simple, right? To keep the build translucent, Benny primed everything with Flex Bond. Afterwards, he applied a thin coat of airbrush paint. He started pretty bright and then just added darker shades on top. Next, he covered all scales in masking tape and painted the rest of the bracer with a bright blue. Some more shadows here and there, getting rid of the tape, and the paint job was done. Pretty! Last but not least, a thick layer of spray varnish to seal his work. My turn again. I covered the inside of my bracer with hot glue and attached a nice white fur trim all around. I weathered it with a grey Copic marker and turned the fur white and spiky with hairspray. For the attachment, I sewed a simple fabric bracer with Velcro. I also hot glued more Velcro to the inside of my foam piece. Now I just pressed it on and it stays. Pure magic! In the meantime, Benny finished the paint job of my claws. I covered the foam on my fingers with contact cement and attached the claw pieces. Oh, and these in-between things stayed on with hot glue. It was actually a bit painful, but the result was so worth it. I love how the lights are shining through the paint job. Next up, the leg armor. For this I had to cover myself in tape again. I drew on some lines with a Sharpie and made sure to get all the right shapes. Next I cut myself free and separated the drawing into actual patterns. Following that, I traced every piece to 5mm EVA foam, cut everything out and got a lovely little puzzle to solve. I covered all edges in contact cement, and after connecting all the pieces carefully, I finally got a nice fitting shin armor. My knee protectors began as a weirdly shaped paper dummy and also ended up as a weirdly shaped foam piece. And this was the final base of my whole leg armor. So let's continue with the details. I separated the patterns of my upper leg armor into smaller pieces and made some layers based on them. These got dremeled first and then burned with my soldering iron. Next, I glued them on one after the other. Just like for the bracers, I added LED strips, then some fancy white scales, and then cuddled Midna, who was waiting patiently. Here is a little light test of my LEDs. Now I burned more texture into the foam, and this part was done as well. Yay! The weird knee thing was made the same way. More layers and scales, and then my knee protector number 1 was finished. And number 2 followed soon as well. The base of the shin armor got an additional layer of foam next. And some more scales too. Doesn't look that complicated, right? And the LEDs worked as well. Yay! Next, Benny had to paint the legs. Some brown color, some blue color, spray varnish, and done. I sewed several fabric pieces for the attachments. They were based on my original patterns and had some Velcro on both ends. I covered the fabric with glue on my leg, very sexy, and pressed the foam pieces on. Same with my shin armor. This time I smeared the glue on my foam and pressed it on my thigh. Then just a little bit more glue to the edges. All that was missing for my legs now were the shoes. For this I actually just patterned my real shoes as well. I traced everything to stretchy fabric and clipped and sewed it together. This boot cover was then closed with Velcro at the back. I also traced the shape of the sole on a piece of sole rubber, cut it out and glued it on with fabric glue. Next, I also created a few armor pieces for the shoes. Nothing fancy really. Some fabric glue here and there, and they were done as well. They looked good. Believe it or not, but the final result stayed perfectly on my body and provided great freedom of movement. Last but not least, I had to make the headpiece. A little while ago we made a 3D scan of my head, which Benny now printed out for me. He glued the pieces together and handed it to me for pattern making. I used myself as a reference and also drew some more shapes on paper. The dummy looked good. Next, I traced all those parts onto Wobbler, cut them out, glued on some LED strips, and connected everything with heat. Once I made sure the circuit worked, I covered the strips in foam scales and dremeled some additional pieces out of black foam. I burned in the texture and it worked out great. Again, Benny painted the whole thing. First the brown and then the blue parts. Then I made a belt out of fabric for the attachment, added Velcro to both ends, and hot glued it to the inside of my mask. Finally, I just had to style this lovely silver lace front wig. I made the hair shorter, thinned it out a bit, cut some bangs, and got rid of a lot more hair. I put the headband on and this was the final result. This costume had a lot of elements, but luckily foam is super cheap. The material costs without the LEDs was only about $100. Man, I love EVA foam. And here is the final costume. I can't believe how comfortable it is. And here again with the LEDs turned on. This was such a fun project to build and I really hope it was also helpful and inspiring for you as well. There's also one more video coming where I show you how I dress up and how all the attachments work. So make sure to check out my book and don't forget to subscribe by clicking on this button. If you like the videos we make, you can also support us on Patreon. So see you next time, bye bye!